I've been on social media now for 12 years. If I wasn't in the role that I was in, I probably would get rid of it because it's become a toxic place. And I think we need to, as adults, ask ourselves the question of why over the last 2 to 3 years are we seeing an escalation in bullying at schools, bullying, racism, particularly at schools. So in our youth, because we've invested a ton of time in education and resources around eliminating bullying at school and addressing it. And I know for myself online, this last year has been unbelievably toxic as a leader. And, I stand by the decisions that I've made. I'm not saying every one of them has been right, but I've done the best that I could do. And, when I've made a choice at the table and cast a vote at the table with the information that I've had at the time. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't go back and change decisions because I've got new information now. But it has become not an argument around why I made the wrong decision, but that I'm a terrible person. Yeah. And, through this last campaign, as an example, the attacks on me were over the top, quite honestly. And the attacks on my family, that came out. And, as an example, my daughter disengages from social media pretty much the 6 months prior to an election till the 6 months after, because it is so hard on her mental health to read the comments and the things people say about me as a person. And we don't think about those impacts at all of, it's great that you posted this comment, but there's a lot of people that are reading that comment that it has an impact on.
Yeah.
And so when we've got this growing crisis around mental health, I think we all need to ask ourselves, what are we doing personally to contribute to the crisis?
Yeah.
And so what you say online, it does matter.
Welcome back to Hear Me Out with Belinda. Today, we're going to be talking about women in leadership and bullying. And joining me in studio is the Okotoks Mayor, Tanya Thorn. Welcome.
Thanks, Belinda, for having me. I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, it should be a fun conversation.
I think so.
Yeah. So let's jump straight into it and talk a little bit about personality traits and becoming a leader. Have you always been a leader through your career?
I think the short answer is yes. I've always progressed every job that I've had into whether that's a leadership role or the de facto group leader. So I've naturally done that. And yeah, here we are today.
Yeah. So I think for this year, I did a lot of personal growth, and I worked with a life coach, and I ended up doing many personality tests. And the one that stands out to me the most is called the Enneagram, and there's 9 personalities, and we all have a little bit of each. But I'm a very strong 8. And so part of my my makeup is that I'm assertive, and I'm I'm a good in an emergency, and I can make quick decisions. Confidence, all of that. But you put me with the wrong person in a work environment that is less assertive, and there's conflict, right? Because I can't always handle that strong personality trait coming through. So yeah, it just got me wondering, because they actually talk about some traits you're born with and some you learn over your life to get into that role, right?
Yeah. I've done a lot of that emotional intelligence work as well. And I think female leaders spend a lot more time on the emotional intelligence work for a variety of different reasons. So as an example for myself, I carry this lovely little card around from work that I've done. And it allows me to think about who else is in the environment that I'm communicating with and how I need to communicate with the other person that's there. So you and I would communicate really well together because I also fall into Mine is red, which is exactly confident, assertive. I'll make quick decisions. So you and I would communicate really well together because we'd have natural traits around that. But I have to make some efforts sometimes to communicate to somebody that is more feelings based.
Yeah.
Not that I don't have feelings, but I don't communicate necessarily in that. I don't do that soft piece. I'd want to get to the, what are we talking about? Where are we going?
Yes.
And not necessarily, how was your night last night?
Yes.
Kind of conversation. So I always have this kind of card close by. So if I'm walking into a conversation with people from my team it just reminds me, it's those cues of what I need to bring to the conversation, because even though I'm assertive and confident and I can make quick decisions, we need to be able to make decisions or move together, at least in my job, together as a team. So you got to think about who else you're communicating with and how you bring them along in their style. No different than they have to think about what my style is and be able to adapt to me as well.
Yeah. And I think that hits a hard point for me personally, because not everybody understands it. And truthfully, I didn't, understand it either. If I go back to my first career in South Africa, I did hospitality and tourism. I won several awards, one of them being the Leadership Award. So I've always had that in me. I've never accepted no if I really wanted to go after something and do it. I got it because when the hotel school said they weren't arranging a wine tour for our year, I was like, no, we're going to do this. So I arranged it and we had a splendid time, right? But in the workplace, what happened to me in a corporate world with not understanding this is that one of my personality traits exactly, I will say something and it wouldn't hurt my feelings to hear it. But I didn't understand that it could hurt somebody else's feelings. So you're a very direct communicator. And, I ended up like in a little bit of, I wouldn't say the word was trouble, but it created a conflict situation that had to be resolved because the person couldn't handle almost my personality, right? And I didn't know how, because I hadn't really dealt with her, person like her before, which I think then brings us to women lifting other women up. But if we're not understanding, like she was trying to tear me down, I believe because, she felt sort of threatened by my presence. Instead of lifting each other up, women go into this like tear each other down, or because we're not understanding this personality. So that's great that you carry the card to try and, see who's in the room, right? Who are you talking to?
Yeah, but I think we all have that personal responsibility to elevate conversation, elevate dialogue. And so we all need to think about what we're bringing to that conversation that is good and bad, and how do we make it better? If the goal, for me, the goal is always to get to some kind of a destination, whether that's a solution to a problem, resolve conflict, anything like that. And it requires two people that are willing in a two-way conversation like this, or a team of people to be willing to come to the table and have sometimes hard conversations in my role. But that means we all got to be open to hearing and understanding the qualities that everybody else is bringing to that table with that. And, I think for me in my career, I think of one situation. I was actually applying for a job way back when here, and I'd given a reference, it's interesting. So the reference, when they were talking to the person that was looking to hire me, of, things to be concerned about with Tanya are, she's quick to make a decision. She takes control in situations. And these were their list of concerns for me. And, can make a decision on her own, doesn't necessarily consult with management, that kind of thing. And so for a lot of people, that would be seen as potentially a negative. I was lucky that the female boss that was looking to hire me went, well, we need all of that. So that makes her a great candidate for what the role they wanted me in. But what I've found over my career is that qualities that if you took a man and said, oh, he's super confident, he's assertive, those are all positives. But when you describe a woman as confident and assertive, it tends to be characterized as a very negative situation. And I've seen that throughout my career on council, is because I am direct. I give factual information. And I am confident in my answers. I get called that I'm cold. I'm bossy. I'm a know-it-all. I think back to my first campaign for mayor, and I had a plan to become mayor at some point in time. That was always kind of on my radar. I was on council for 2 terms before. And so I'd done a lot of work in that 8 years to be prepared for a role, which I think, again, as women, we tend to undersell ourselves and only apply for a job if we've got all of the qualifications on the thing. If there's one we don't have, we tend not to apply, which we sell ourselves short. However, so I'd done a whole ton of training over the 8 years while I was on council so that I would be ready for what I believed you needed to bring as leaders to the mayor's chair. And during the debate, I was listing my qualifications. I'd done X in governance training, I'd done financial management training, all of these things. The next day on social media, I was called arrogant because I was selling my qualifications and that you didn't need all these qualifications to do the job, and that they could just come in and learn these things. But I was arrogant and egotistical was how I was described on social media, interestingly enough, by a female.
Yeah.
And I just found it very fascinating because if the roles had been reversed and it was a male that was in my situation and gave all their skills, the conversation on social media would be the other of how dare I apply for the job and not be qualified for it.
Yeah.
And so I think the double standard that still exists out in the world today for females, and we don't have to be equals. We actually have to be better and bring more to the table. And even when we bring more to the table, we're criticized because we have more and we're willing to stand up and say, I am qualified for this job.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's exactly it, right? As females, we're not equals. We have to be better for the most part in our positions because we face criticism from females and from men, right? And so I think we are in similar age. I don't actually know. I'm just taking a wild guess here.
We're 32, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Where we are that sort of transitional generation, right? I know my mom was a stay-at-home mom while I was at school. My dad was the breadwinner. We had a very traditional, family life. I didn't want that. I always wanted a career, but then I married someone from South Africa who had the same sort of traditional values. And I love my husband. We just celebrated, our 24 years of marriage together. But it never dawned on us in our younger years that we couldn't keep those traditions, right? I couldn't be, doing the grocery shopping, cleaning the house, looking after the kids, or at least dropping them at daycare, working a full-time job and letting him just go to work and back and, taking out the garbage. We did do it like that. But it didn't work. I mean, resentment kicked in, like burnout, all of that. So we had to review everything, but it didn't cross our minds to change things, right? And so we need to have careers. We need to be great moms. We need to, be good wives, friends, all of this. And so we have these qualities, and then people we're judged for having those qualities, and especially, like I said, the confrontational, the aggressive, all of those type of things as well.
Well, and I think politics is a perfect spot that we've only got about 30% representation still across the board at all levels of government of female representation, yet we make up 50% of the population.
Yeah.
And I know from door knocking, and many of my other female colleagues would say the same thing, but I was asked a question when I first started, and well, how are you going to do this job and be a mother? I know none of my male colleagues were asked, how are you going to do this job and be a father?
Yeah.
So the questions and the standards that we have and expectations we have of women in politics, again, are different, but we're doing the exact same job as our male counterparts. But yet, because I've got kids, it potentially means I can't do the job.
Right.
From a voter perspective. And, it was one of the reasons that I actually originally ran is that when I looked at the council table at that time, it was a lot of older white men. I think there was one female in council at the time. And I didn't see myself at that table. I didn't see young families. I didn't see female representation that were working moms, having a family, trying to have a career. I didn't see that at the table. And it was one of the reasons I ran. There was a variety of others, but that was one of it, is that I wasn't seen at the table. And as I've been through this, I've been at the table now for 12 years. And it's interesting now because I speak a lot and spend a lot of time in the schools.
Yeah.
And I now have young girls or women in our community that see themselves being able to do this job. And it resonates for them. And, I had a group of girls a couple years ago that said, oh, I didn't know women could be mayors. And it's because it's not something we traditionally see. It's changing, but we're still not at that par.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's those changing roles that are very slow to take. I actually think it brings me to the Rotary Club of Okotoks. I think I'm the current president. And I was looking at the list of presidents since they started in the 80s. And obviously I think it's 80% men. Don't quote me on that percentage. But I did see your name pop up on what they had called the pub club at the time as the leader. And then I know that there was decisions around just making it one big club again. But the same thing within the Rotary Club. I mean, I am very, very well embraced now. It's very much a pivotal year of keeping the longer serving Rotarians and the newer members happy, coming together for a common cause. And it's trying to find that balance, like I said, bringing everybody to the table. We're working on a common goal. What is that goal and how can we achieve it, right? We have these two different sides, these two different ideas, that we need to now bring together into everything. And I think that's part of just almost the new world, right? We're like trying to brace that into everything that we do.
Yeah, well, and I think the world has changed a lot, right? And I'm a big believer that we get better solutions if we're willing to collaborate. But being willing to collaborate means that we're willing to show up at the table with different perspectives and respectfully share those perspectives and then try and find the best solution. My personality trait, similar to you, I can find a solution for most problems that I run into and I face. That does not mean that my solution is actually the best solution, but I'm quick to make a decision and I can do that. But if I have somebody other else or a team of people that also contribute, what I find the value of that is, one, it'll correct for any biases that I have because we all have them. But it'll also open I didn't think of it from that perspective. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, if we shift and do this, that would solve for that. And we end up with a better solution. And in politics, I think that's the piece for me that I look at is we've become so us versus them. And I have yet to see a political party that gets it 100% wrong 100% of the time, or one that gets it 100% right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And so when I take and look at housing policy as an example, right? I think there's good pieces in the, Liberals or the UCP's housing policy, as well as there's in the NDP's housing policy. But there's things in each of those that I don't like. And if we could actually work together in a better way, maybe we could create a really much better housing policy that sees from both of those perspectives. But we've become so us versus them. And so because I sit in this camp and I'm, I vote blue or I vote orange or I vote red, whichever way everybody votes, it means we want to be 100% right. But nobody's ever 100% right, know? And I think that's the piece that as humans, we need to step back a little bit and go, do I actually know everything that I need to know here?
Yeah.
And what is that person telling me?
Yeah. I think it goes back to that open dialogue. If I think about it, if you just take society or, a community, everybody wants the same thing. We want to be able to have our own home. We want to be able to have food, want to have security, healthcare, family vacations. I mean, to name a couple. I think everybody can agree that that's the goal, right? but everybody disagrees on the best way to achieve it, right? And that's what we're really fighting against. And until we, like you said, start listening and seeing value in what other people and really listening, like I think it is, like you said, it's, unfortunately, in every discussion, whether it's family, friends, whatever, everything is polarized right now. Everything, like no one's stopping to take a breath and listening to the other person to actually hear what they're saying. They want to listen so that they can just explain their vantage point and why they are correct.
Yeah. And I think for me as a leader in our community, and I'll just bring it back to the community bubble here, I have not yet met anybody that doesn't want an awesome community, that doesn't love what Okotoks is, and that we're all striving for we want it to be a great community for our kids to come back to, our families to be raised in, our parents to live in, and have things to do. But where I think that you're right in that the how part of it is where we get, but we can't come up with what those hows would be if we're not willing to sit down and have respectful dialogue. And, I think that's the piece for me as a leader in our community of what role do I play as mayor and council play to try and bring kindness and respect back to dialogue. Because right now what's happening online and social media, and it's not just in our own community, it's everywhere, but I can only have influence in my community. How do we actually get back to that so that we can really find real solutions to some of the big problems and challenges that we have right now in Okotoks and coming? Because without that, we're not going to be able to garner those other perspectives that make council better decision makers. Because if it's always about how terrible I am as a person, it really results in I'm not going to listen to that perspective. Whereas if you came and said, well, I actually really think you need to look at it from this and this, and here's the 5 concerns that I have about this direction that are related to, I won't be able to do X, Y, Z at the pedestrian crossing, but instead it's attacks at me as a person, which has nothing to do with the decision-making piece. Right. I may not like someone, we may not like each other, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to sit down at the table and have a conversation around a problem. And either we can agree politely to disagree or go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting piece. Let me look at that. Or, oh, I didn't know those are the other 5 things you were dealing with. Okay, that makes sense. And I understand why you made that decision.
Yeah. Like you said, I think we've lost a lot of the conversation. And I think when you're touching on the community and yourself, women in leadership and those type of things, we have to talk about a bit of the cyberbullying and the things that go on social media. And I think I heard someone say at one point, attack the policy, not the person, right? Because you really don't know the person. And really, it's not about the person, it's about the policy that's been made. So keep it, professional, keep your integrity intact when you're on the social media platforms. And I only started venturing into social media. I mean, I had my Facebook account for my friends. And I actually used to pride myself on having a cut list every year. I would just cut off people that I hadn't been, communicating with. So my social network was very small. And then when I started in the podcast, one of the things you want to do is you want to increase your presence. And I really had to think about it and be like, can I put myself out there? Can I actually open myself up to online criticism? Because I truly believe no matter what a great job a person does, someone's going to have a problem with the way it was done, right? And so I really had to reflect and be like, okay, I can do this. I can expect that there'll be a couple of people that may not like what I have to say or how I said it, but all I can do is do, my best and be proud, of the work that I'm doing. But it does bring me into thinking about society in our little community. I have a teenage son at school, and if adults, right, are attacking leadership online, what are they teaching their kids, right? Like that's what I always think about, because kids learn from their parents. So if the parents feel like it's okay to attack the person online and say, mean things without consequence, then I think the kids think the same thing. So we've got this revolving cycle out there. What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. I've been on social media now for 12 years. If I wasn't in the role that I was in, I probably would get rid of it because it's become a toxic place. And I think we need to, as adults, ask ourselves the question of why over the last 2 to 3 years are we seeing an escalation in bullying at schools, bullying, racism, particularly at schools. So in our youth, because we've invested a ton of time in education and resources around eliminating bullying at school and addressing it. And I know for myself online, this last year has been unbelievably toxic as a leader. And, I stand by the decisions that I've made. I'm not saying every one of them has been right, but I've done the best that I could do. And, when I've made a choice at the table and cast a vote at the table with the information that I've had at the time. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't go back and change decisions because I've got new information now. But it has become not an argument around why I made the wrong decision, but that I'm a terrible person. And, through this last campaign, as an example, the attacks on me were over the top, quite honestly. And the attacks on my family, that came out. And, as an example, my daughter disengages from social media pretty much the 6 months prior to an election till the 6 months after, because it is so hard on her mental health to read the comments and the things people say about me as a person. And we don't think about those impacts at all of, it's great that you posted this comment, but there's a lot of people that are reading that comment that it has an impact on.
Yeah.
And so when we've got this growing crisis around mental health, I think we all need to ask ourselves, what are we doing personally to contribute to the crisis?
Yeah.
And so what you say online, it does matter.
Yeah.
There might not be any accountability or action to it because it's becoming harder and harder to hold people accountable. But somebody else is reading that. And a broad range of people are reading it. And what is your impact and your cause to the mental health crisis that's there? And we need to start asking ourselves that question personally. And if you're not willing to say it to me on my face, why are you willing to type it and put it online? The number of anonymous people that post that you can't even, they don't have a picture, can't figure out who they are. They've created anonymous profiles, with not their real name. Why?
Yeah.
Like, if you're willing to type it, why are you not willing to say, my name is Tanya Thorn and this is my thoughts?
Yeah.
And we really need to come back and talk about civility.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. I know in the new year, I've just recently started to come back on a more regular basis to social media because I didn't disengage after the election. Because it took everything in my power to get through the election from a mental perspective. But in the new year, I will be coming out for the first time in 12 years of being on social media with a very clear list of what my boundaries are and what that's going to mean for people that want to engage on my page.
Yeah.
Because it's the only place I can control it. But there is going to be a clear set of boundaries of how we're going to engage on my social media. If you choose to engage elsewhere differently, that's your call. But I'm going to moderate and control that and really define those boundaries because I need to be able to go home at the end of the day and actually still function.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I didn't, obviously I followed the campaigns, but I didn't realize the extent of the social media, the I guess the word for it is bullying, like cyberbullying. And I'm not sure who else is affected, but obviously being the mayor, I think I can understand, how. But you're right. How I go back to the parents. If parents think it's okay to talk like that, and maybe they don't, and maybe that's why they are anonymous, right? What are they hiding about? Like, do they not want to have, like, maybe in those personality traits? It would be really, really interesting for me if someone could run like a science of which personality traits are the ones posting anonymously these negative comments, right? Because I don't think a person with my personality, of yours for that matter, I wouldn't hide behind it. Like if I'm going to post something, I'm proud of what I'm posting, right? Whether it's a positive comment or a negative comment, I'm happy with what I'm not going to post something that I'm ashamed other people are going to know that it was me posting, right? So going back to the, anonymous post, I would wonder what type of personality that's posting. But then more than that, recently being a Rotarian, we were looking at, I've met with a couple of people from the Foothills Community Coalition, talking a little bit about a youth hub. And so one of the, actually I think it's the chief superintendent from the Foothills School Division had mentioned that the parents are not okay. And because the parents are not okay, the kids are not okay. So the mental health crisis is not just impacting the kids.
No.
And so those parents that could possibly be in a position to help the kids, they're not okay. So they cannot help the kids, right? So it's this whole big cycle of things going on. Going back to, who else is what other comments, obviously you're in a leadership role, but what other comments are being said out there to other people that are, just hurt feelings? Like we talk about being kind. Like where did the kindness go? How do we bring kindness back into the dialogue of people and teach adults? I mean, it's kind of sad to say that we've got to teach adults to be kind again,
Well, and I, I'm not sure in the personality testing and different things you've done, like emotional intelligence stuff. There's things that if I'm calm and when I'm in a centered place, I will operate in a certain way. But if my stress level goes up, I will fall to some default habits, right? And so if social media is constantly creating us getting into that fight or flight brain of ours and creating that stress, do we ever get to that stable place of communication? And I'd argue that most people, social media is creating a stress impact. Like there's a lot going on. It's outside of just the boundaries of Okotoks. There's a lot happening in the world that I think creates stress just in itself. But to your point about, the parents aren't okay, so our kids aren't okay. How do we get back to creating some resilience? And it's one of the reasons for us as council, we created an identity-based growth strategy last time, is because we see it in the work that we do as the town of Okotoks, that community connection, the more community connection we can create, the more resilient people are. And so if we can actually get people to, I won't say disengage on social media, but actually come out from their keyboards and actually come out into the street and connect with a neighbor, whether that's at a block party or just going for coffee or getting involved in an event or volunteering for something, but creating those connection points, that is what builds resilience in a community. Because now all of a sudden you're starting to have those communication pieces and hearing different pieces and being engaged in a different manner of, like, you being involved in Rotary. You'll see a whole different lens of the community because of the work you're doing. That if you weren't doing that work, you might not have the perspective of the Foothills Youth Hub as an example. Same thing for me as mayor. I'm connected in a variety of different ways, and I see a bunch of different things on the ground. I talk to a lot of different people face to face every day. So I hear a wide variety of perspectives. And I would say a big majority of those perspectives don't match the conversation on social media.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Like if you're just on social media, you're missing, I teach my kids this as well. You're missing life, right? So like that's not real life. It's like having a little avatar, right? Like you need to get out there. So yeah, I think that's wonderful of building the community, right? The grassroots, what we talk about is, like making those connections. I think I met you last week at a entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurial connections group that was started over the summer by our podcast host, Sarah and Donna, which is wonderful, right? It's people that I would never have met, all within the community. I got my glasses from Donna. So yeah, it's a great way just to connect with people, like I said, hear other perspectives and stuff. So yeah, but Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's not unique to Okotoks. It's a worldwide problem. And we just got to start somewhere. So start within the community, I guess, and see where it can go.
Yeah, and I do. I'm a big believer that the small actions that we each take can improve things. If I had the power and ability to say, okay, town of Okotoks, everybody's taking a social media holiday for the next 60 days and nobody's allowed to go on it, I actually think that we would be stronger as a community at the end of that 60 days. And for a variety of reasons, is social media has resulted in a significant increase in misinformation or malinformation, and of either that. It's malinformation it's factually correct, but it's taken out of context.
Okay.
Whereas misinformation is just blatantly wrong. And so it's created this increase in that. And I even know for myself, it's created this, it becomes harder and harder to break down of what's actually truth here.
Yeah.
Like I've heard 3 or 4 things. How do I actually go about finding the truth?
Yeah.
And so when you've got that and that's being perpetuated and we believe that, oh, my friend posted this, so it must be truth, but you don't actually know. Like I think of the number of times that I've seen my parents post something on social media. I'm like, you got to delete that. That's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and here's all the information. Well, but my friend, I understand that, but they probably shared it from another friend and it's just wrong. And so it becomes so easy to perpetuate misinformation or disinformation or malinformation, whichever way you want to go, bad information. And finding that source of truth is becoming really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so that's creating part of the problem as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you combat that, but I do believe that if we just work in our own little Okotoks bubble and think about what we're presenting there, we can build resilience in the community. My biggest haters, I will say online, interestingly enough, seem to be women, which I always wonder about that tearing down of women. And again, not that they have to like me, but it becomes really personal, but I don't see them involved in the community. I don't see them volunteering at events. I don't see them volunteering with groups. I don't see them at events. They don't engage in any other way other than on social media. I said to somebody the other day, since I've been elected, I've kind of kept an informal tally. I've probably posted my phone number or my email to reach out to me on an issue that's been come out online probably about 800 times. I've had 2 phone calls or 2 emails related to those conversations.
Yeah.
And so we want to be mean online, but we actually aren't interested in having a conversation about real information.
Yeah.
And, some of my biggest critics this last time around, they've never emailed me. They've never had a personal conversation with me, but yet they are spewing a lot of information about who I am and what I don't do. But yet we've never actually either met, had a conversation, or engaged on any topic
together.
And so how can you make those judgments? And that's the part I struggle with.
Yeah.
Is it's okay to dislike me. I'm totally okay. And I'm totally okay for you to disagree with decisions we've made. But if you're not willing to come to the table and have a discussion of why you think I should have made a different decision or council should have made a different decision, and share your perspective, then what's the point of the personal attack?
Yeah. I think like something that comes to mind on that is that hurt people hurt people. It's quite a big saying. I don't know who started it, but I think it goes back to that. If you're hurting inside, you attack someone, right? And so going back to, but it doesn't mean that it's right. And it doesn't mean that your words don't have consequences or hurt that person or their family. Like you said, it has a like a ripple, effect out there. So yeah, I commend you for, I guess, standing up for yourself and saying, this is how we're going to move forward. I'm going to put my boundaries in. I'm going to protect my family, and being open with your phone number, right? If people really, if people want to know, have that conversation, right? And go back to, and join, like I said, come join Rotary if you want to, be active in the community and make a difference. It's a nonpartisan. We're not political. We're not religious. So it's a great way to get involved in the community from grassroots up and see. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the great thing about Okotoks is there's so many groups that you can go and get involved in, right?
Yeah.
The library offers, morning knitting,
Yeah.
so if you go and knit with some people, there's board game nights, there's Rotary, there's just so many groups in our community that people have the ability to get involved in. And if we really want to create resilience in community, we have to start thinking about how do we actually create connections, because connections is what gives us a strength, right? I can do this job because I have a really, really strong family and friend unit, that I have very trusted space, and I can have my mental health breakdown with them, and they build me back up and give me the space of, right, okay, perspective. And that the world isn't coming to an end in some days where it feels like that, right? And, the work council does, we do carry a heavy load, and we are making big decisions. It's not an easy job. But I have yet to meet anybody that does this job in any municipality that gets up every morning going, how do we screw our community over? That isn't how I start my day. I've lived in Okotoks for over 36 years, and I intend to live here for a very long time ahead. So I want a good community as well.
Yeah.
And so, I really encourage people to just come out and find a way to get involved. And it can be really small.
Yeah.
Phone a friend and go for coffee in a coffee shop and see other people.
Yeah. I think we're coming to the end of the time. So I think actually that's a great way to end it, right? Is a message to the community of, kindness, and get out there, get out in the community, get off social media, go for a walk, get into the community, go to, one of your favorite coffee spots, meet a friend or meet someone new, make a new friend. And let's be kind to each other.
Yeah, if there was a message, that's the message, Belinda.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It was lovely chatting with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.